Welcome to the Limitless Life podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith, and with me today is a longtime friend and brother in suffering, Shaun Caron. Shaun, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here.
I'm excited to be here. This is awesome. Congrats on getting this going.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming along. And something I want to do at the beginning of every podcast is I want to acknowledge the person that I'm interviewing with, something that is a way that they have impacted me directly, which I'm not sure how many episodes I'll go through, but I'll do my best to find it. So anyways, Shaun, my man, I just want to say thank you for pushing me into doing the world's toughest mudder. You were politely persistent. And it was probably, I would say, safe bet 6 months of, hey, Kyle, did you sign up for the world's toughest mudder yet? And this is in Las Vegas. For anyone that doesn't know, the world's toughest mudder is a 24-hour race, 40 obstacles. What's the distance usually?
The course is 5 miles, so 8 kilometers, and I think they range 20 to 25-ish main obstacles, and then they have the penalty ones, which kind of it blurs the lines on how many you end up doing. And then you have 24 hours to run that loop as many times as you possibly can.
Nice. So with that, I was telling Kendra about this like literally earlier today, but I reference my life to a point of before toughest mudder and after toughest mudder. And at the right sequence of events just lapped. And then like the shenanigans that was going on in my life at that point, I can see where the focus happened. It was after toughest mudder where I really wanted to dial my own shit in. And that's where through the discomfort of doing something, and I never trained for it. I've done tough mudders, but I've never done that distance before. That was the first time I've ever done that distance and that kind of an event, and it was disgusting. But the thing that it showed me, that discomfort, it showed me, I came up with this philosophy of breaking down the body to build the mind back up. And I would not have been able to learn that lesson. And I thank you greatly for where I'm at now, because I contribute so much of now to that point.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I mean, I can remember, I think it was probably in 2014, just like picking your brain, or no, 2015, because I'd done it 2015 was my first year doing it. And then I was like, after that, I was like, Kyle needs to do this with me. Like, he got me into Tough Mudder. This is like a full circle thing. And just like every couple months, like, have you signed up for that? Hey, come out, do a workout with me. You know, you did train, we did a burpee mile. And I think that's
Absolutely.
that was a good training day on, hey, okay, that took us over 2 hours. Oh, it's about a lap at World's Toughest.
That's so
How do
funny.
you feel good? And you just do it again.
Yeah. On that note, I'm also going to list off some of your accolades because you absolutely crushed it. So you did 4 World's Toughest Mudders. That's disgusting in itself. Your longest distance was 80 miles, 215 combined miles, and around 950 obstacles completed combined. So that's just the World's Toughest Mudder. Then you've also ran 3,000 kilometers in 2021, ran 2,500 kilometers in 2020, completed the River Valley Revenge, which is a 100K ultra there we go. A 100K ultra in 2018. You completed Sinister 7, 100 miler in 2019. You ran 1 backyard ultra because, there's no sense in actually going and running for distance. You might as well do circles in your backyard for an ultra. You know what I mean? And then you completed 9 yards for 65 kilometers and 1 burpee mile with me, my man. So
a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So I gotta, this is a question that I think is a really interesting one for you. And I think you'll probably have a lot of fun with it, but what compels you to show yourself so much love?
Show yourself so much love. That's an interesting way to put it. I think, it's a slow trickle into it. I think anyone that starts to get into the endurance events or just doing things for a long time. I don't know too many people that think of doing that right off the get-go. It's kind of just, you start to push yourself and you hit one milestone, then then you're okay, well, I'm not destroyed. Maybe I can go further. Maybe I can do a little bit more. And it started in 2013 with you getting me to do a Tough Mudder, which at that point was way out of my comfort zone. Seeing the commercials or any previews, you watch videos on YouTube, there's people getting electrocuted, there's fire, there's mud, there's all this hard stuff. And it started with that. And I remember Everest, the first time doing Everest, not being able to get up because, it's probably my footwear was horrible. I was wearing water shoes like an idiot. And I couldn't get any traction going up that thing. And you basically had to bicep curl me up that thing, but I got up it. And that was like, okay, I was terrified of that obstacle, pulling myself up, and like finishing that day was like, okay, I want to do this next year, but I want to be better at it. And then like the next year, train smarter, did way more pull-ups, ran a lot more, started to love running from there. And then, that year that we went was, we was crushing the obstacles. And at the end of it, my legs felt pretty good, where I was like, maybe I could do another lap. And as Tough Mudder's smart marketing, they had World's Toughest Mudder. They had a sign up there at Whistler. In my head, I was like, well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do that next year. And 2015 was that pivotal year for me. It's like doing your first Worlds was pivotal for you. That was 2015 was a very defining year for me because of World's Toughest, because of the impact that event, that 24 hours had on me and still has on me. Because I always refer to it back. I always think about some of those really impactful moments I had during that night, that cold night out in the desert, and how it's defined me and how it kind of broke some shackles off my limits, off my whole mentality on like kind of going through life and going through obstacles and kind of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And it's, I try to be mindful of it so I don't get complacent, but I think that kind of answers the question a little bit. It's a slow tiptoe in, and just kind of loved it more, and kind of always just want to find a challenge for myself. It was really physical for a lot of years. I've really worked on the mental side of it, and then just doing other big challenges. But I kind of tackle it now in the same way I would a physical challenge.
So I got a question for that as well. Do you think, because I imagine that's not just the running, but I believe because I think it could be getting out of the physical aspect of it, like doing some form of physical activity that is difficult, that provides a discomfort that's manageable. I think that's where a lot of folks change. So I imagine that it's the discomfort that really gets that change going and not the running, right? So if someone wanted to lift weights instead, it would probably be fairly, would you say that's probably accurate?
Oh yeah. As soon as you kind of feel that you kind of hit that physical wall, that little physical wall where your mind starts to go like, I don't know if I can do this. It's tough. That's once you hit that point, you're in, I think, a really good spot. And you can get to that spot in different ways, and in relationships, you can be pushed into that way. Your career, your work can push you into that, can get you into that pocket. But it's kind of learning to, when you get into that, to not immediately back away and run away from it. It's to really sit in it and be like, I'm in this spot. This is actually a good thing for me. I know it sucks right now, but there's going to be some benefit coming later from this. And whatever happens, whether it's a positive or negative thing, there's going to be some learning and there's going to be some growth from it no matter what. So that's kind of something I think I've taken from starting on a physical thing with more or less running. I kind of use that metaphor a lot, where it's like, okay, you can run 100 miles, you can face kind of really almost any challenge that comes your way. You just have to get in the right mind frame.
Yeah. So with that as well. So I'm thinking like difficulties is always fun, because there's a lot of folks that like to, it's a survival bias. So it's like, oh, that person's obviously built for that, so I can't do that. So for example, I imagine that there's some folks that could be thinking, oh, this Shaun guy, he probably has the body that's built for running. Like, oh, just absolutely, like he must be a running prodigy because he is covering so much distance. And yeah, you're certainly not a running outlier, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So correct me if I'm wrong. You're over 6 foot, you're over 200, and you got muscle. You got muscle.
yeah. So big term for it called the Clydesdale. That's I think 200 pounds. You're a Clydesdale runner. You're a heavyweight. Yeah, I'm like 6'3". I think I'm around like 215 right now. I've always kind of been around that 200 to 215 mark. I feel like that's kind of like a healthy spot for me to be in. But I don't think I look like that, stereotypical runner, like tall, lean, that can go long distance. And with that, people have always kind of mention or say like, oh, it's gonna be hard on your joints. You're a bigger person. You're a bigger guy. Like, so I've kind of learned over the years on running as efficient as possible and trying to do as much learning as I can, watching videos, listening to podcasts on runners, on gait, stride, on trying to always have kind of a mantra of like, act like you're running on a cloud, like be as light as you can bounce off a cloud so you won't sink through. And I feel it's allowed me to do some, pretty long distances, get some pretty large numbers of kilometers, done without any, severe injuries. I've had a couple stress fractures come my way here or there, but as far as like knee problems, I don't get knee problems yet on knock on that. I get some muscle tightness. So, but muscle is something you can work through. You can maintenance that. It's the joints in your, in your knees. You want to try and withstand as much damage as possible. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job at that. So I definitely don't look like a runner, but I also think that is a reminder that you don't have to look like a runner to be a runner. If you go out there and run a kilometer, you're a runner. If you go out there and run 500 meters, you're a runner. If you go out there and run 50K, you're a runner. It's like, if you get out there and do it, you're a runner. There's no body type, or there's no like person you have to be. You don't have to look like a certain way. Just get out there and get after it and enjoy it.
I totally agree with that. Kind of a neat question. I imagine Sinister Sevens or any of the Toughest Mudders would probably be the best kind of thoughts for this particular question. But what has been, and it's a little bit more philosophical, what has been a gift discomfort has given you?
That is a great question. The gift of discomfort. It lets you really enjoy times where you're not in pain. So in times where you're like before the race or like after a few days after, you really enjoy like, wow, I feel a lot better now. That's like usually the first immediate gift. But I think what the biggest gift is just knowing you can push yourself and you find a new limit and then you survived it. And not only do you survive it, you came out of it like pretty unscathed. Your muscles are sore, but that's pretty natural. Maybe you have a couple, bumps, bruises, scratches, cuts, but there's no like big injuries. And you're able to, within a few days, you're kind of back to normal. And then you get that thing going in your head, you're like, okay, well, I just did that. And I was like, very tough. What else can I do? And then when kind of what I alluded to before is like when other problems come your way, the gift you have is like, well, you can do hard shit because you did that. So you can apply that to different things. It may not be a physical challenge. It may be a mental, something with your work, something with your relationships, but you can tackle it the same because you've been able to figure out how to do something that a lot of people think is like insane or impossible, or I don't know how you would do that. It's like, well, anyone can. You just have to really put your mindset to it and not let any distractions or obstacles or setbacks derail you too much from accomplishing the goal. So I think the gift that discomfort gives is takes another shackle off, or takes another shelf off on your limit, and you just increased it one more shelf or one more block. I refer to a lot of my running endurance whenever I've done another big feed or another long run. It's you're adding another block on your endurance, and there's really no cap on it. You're just continually building a block, and that just lets you know you can go a little bit further the next time. And it's never ending, because you can always build on it. You can lose it really quick, but and then you just get back to building it again. So you're always kind of building this block of endurance, whether it's mental or physical.
I think that's pretty sweet. Yeah. So a book that I read at the beginning of last year, because even though we're 3 days into the new year, was that really started helping me challenge my own thinking. Because I think that maybe we are not ready for a physical challenge, but I believe that we have the capacity to challenge our thinking rather than affirming our thoughts. And I'm working on, I have a framework that I just kind of created for the year. It's called the Big Idea Framework. And IDEA is an acronym for intentional, discussion, elimination, automation. So it's going to be intentional, actively participating in the thought; discussion, actively challenging the thought; elimination, decreasing the cognitive load; and then automation, where the conscious becomes unconscious.
Ooh.
Not bad, eh? So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm trying to organize, I'm trying to create a mental exercise that's for constructive thinking. So I find that a majority of folks, it starts with the physical, going into the physical activity, and then the mind changes as we be the person it takes to get what we want, which is a neat little philosophical way of going about it too. But I'm trying to come up with the mental component to it. It's like, how could I actually dial the mental component in before the physical component is? So that's why I'm kind of going with that. But anyways, the book that I read that kind of started with this whole idea, and then also overcoming the opposition, so I titled the framework as the Big Idea Framework for getting your brain to work with you rather than against you.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be sweet. And so the book Comfort Crisis is what really started getting the thought process. How far can we actually organize our mind? How mindful can we be? How intentional can we be? And that's when you're running or in exercise, it's the flow state, right? It's where, how can we find ourselves in the environment or in the space to really think? And I think in the discomfort, that's where we really find clarity on what we want to accomplish and our intention. Do you think, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the world being in a comfort crisis?
Yeah, I think for a good chunk, good majority of the world, probably maybe scratch out a million people not included, but everyone that's fortunate enough to live in a modernized Western, world where your basic needs are kind of met. Yeah, I think there is that comfort crisis. I think we got a good hit of that through the last couple of years of COVID, because all of us were throwing a lot of curveballs, and you kind of saw how people reacted, and a lot of people didn't react in a very good way. A lot of people really struggled, and I mean, I'm not just saying it's because they live in a comfort too comfy for that, because there's a lot of mental health issues that was going on with it. But I think it really hit that nail that a lot of people are living very comfortably, and they're not pushing themselves out of that comfort zone as much as they should be. And when life kind of throws that at you, they're not ready to deal with any discomfort because they haven't had to. So they don't know how to mentally deal with it. They don't know how to physically deal with it. And I think there are a lot of people who could get a lot of use and find a lot of positive outcomes. There's a lot of positivity from just dipping themselves in a little discomfort, maybe once a week or every couple of days. You do something that's a little difficult. Maybe that's, instead of, if you're watching TV, maybe instead of sitting down all the time, maybe you start at every commercial break, you get up and you do like deep squat. And that's something that I've started to do, so that if I'm watching TV, I want to, okay, every commercial break or every X amount of minutes, just go into deep squat, open the back up, open, the hips up a little bit, keep them from getting tight. It sucks for me right now. That area for me is very tight. So it's like, it's very uncomfortable, but at least then I'm like kind of doing something that's very small, but that's like one thing people can pick while they're doing something that they still want to be doing. It's like, okay, well, every now and then while you're doing that, do something that's a little out of your comfort zone. Then at least you start to kind of train the brain, and maybe after a while, all of a sudden you can hold the squat for 5 minutes, and then you can hold the squat for 7 minutes, and it's like that tiptoe. You just kind of slowly start to tiptoe, and hopefully maybe then you're doing more and you're seeing the positive outcome from it. And you're like, okay, maybe that can get people started to venture into more uncomfortable things. But I think you're right. And I think that book, I haven't read the book, but I watched a few podcasts with the author, and I think he hits a lot of points, and they're all very valid, that for us that are fortunate to like I said, have all of our basic needs met. We're definitely living in a comfort crisis.
Totally. So something I think is kind of cool, because with you not being built, quote unquote, built as a runner, and then just going into running as your sport of choice. Yeah, we'll go sport of choice because it is a sport.
Yep.
Did you have to temper your patience? So people want to start things and get really good at things as fast as possible. Did you have to temper your patience, and how did you temper your patience? Was there any sort of a framework, a little mental trick, or what's some things that you've used in that way to temper patience?
It's probably one of the most frustrating things about getting into endurance. If you are someone who is thinking about it, wants to, and endurance can go in a lot of different ways. Maybe you want to run your first half marathon or marathon, those are venturing into that. There's unfortunately no shortcuts to it. I tried that. When I was training for my first World's Toughest, I went out to do a long training run, and I was like, hey, I'm doing a marathon distance today. Never done it before. Up until that point, I was doing a good thing of increasing my distance about 10% every week. So I was slowly getting in, and the run before that, I did 32K, and it was like, I felt good. So I was like, it's another 10K. Well, how bad can it be? I'd never experienced the runner's bonk before hitting the wall that every marathoner knows too well. And I literally did not even bring I didn't bring a water bottle with me. Like, I brought nothing. I ate a lot of food. I drank a lot of water beforehand. I was like, I'm good. Go out. Let's just get it. And when I bonked so hard. And I, like, going down the stairs by the Talus balls in Edmonton.
Oh, yeah.
I was going down those stairs and my legs just gave out. And I was on like the middle platform, and it's like, I guess I'll stretch. I guess this is my body saying it needs a timeout. And I was hurting, and I had 10K to go until my place. Like, there's no, if it was either walking or running. Uber wasn't there yet. So couldn't even just like ditch and just like call an Uber. Uber wasn't around quite yet. So that last 10K was just brutal. Like, I was licking my hands to get salt. That's how bad I was in the hurt locker. So I learned that day. It's like, you can't jump when you read, okay, the best thing to do is increase your distance, increase it a little bit at a time. That'll get you to the point you need to be. You have to be patient. You have to trust the process, because if you don't, your body will let you know you screwed up, and it's going to suck. And if you're like 10K away, like I was, that 10K is going to not be enjoyable, but you're going to learn from it. And you're going to learn what it feels like So at least, you can say you can do 10K in a pretty brutal state of mind, physically and mentally.
So what, if you can recall, like, what was your internal dialogue on that last 10K? Like after your stretch, what was that?
Oh, just, it hurt to run. Like running was horrible. So it was like, in my head, I was like, easiest thing to do is just walk, but I didn't want to be out there for another hour plus 2 hours potentially. I was like, I'm so hungry. I'm so thirsty. If I just run, like it's going to suck, but it's going to be faster. So let's just run as long as I can. And then when I have to walk, I'll walk for like a minute or two. So it's basically like run for maybe like 3-4 minutes, walk for like 1 or 2 minutes, run another 3 or so minutes, walk until my quads didn't hurt anymore. And just had to repeat that. And I had unfortunately had to learn that lesson a few times as I was getting the distance up and starting to run a lot more. But then I used that kind of stuff to my advantage. The year I finished Sinister 7, I started to kind of intentionally put myself in a really bad mental, physical state. I got creative. I was like, hey, like, how am I going to try and replicate the last 50K of this race without actually running 110 kilometers? I was like, well, I'll be tired, I'll be dehydrated, and I'll feel like shit. I was like, well, those 3 things happen when I have a hangover. So I intentionally got very intoxicated one night. I don't know if this, probably a lot, if there's trainers, nutritionists probably like, what? But like, this is going on in my head of like, how do I put myself into pain cave without putting myself into pain cave? So I got really drunk one night, and then the next morning went out and ran 50K, and it sucked. It was brutal.
That's so funny.
And it was a very long day, but I did that. And then after I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. Hopefully I can dip into that and during Sinister. So I can be like, hey, you got this. Remember when you ran 50K, like after you were loaded? You're fine. You're basically at the same state.
I like using that kind of reference point. I like using reference points to compare the present day difficulty. I think people reflect on like the past and stuff and try to bring the shitty shit into the present. And that I think is working in reverse. I think someone should look to the past to say, holy shit, I did get through that, so I can get through this easily. So I think like that reference point, having a past reference point makes it a lot easier to go into things that are more difficult. It's like, oh, you know what? I could probably crank this out. On the note of you running in ridiculous conditions, what's the coldest you've ever ran? Ish.
Yeah, I definitely have done a few runs where it's getting close to -40, probably -40 with the wind. During when I was doing the 3000K in 2021, like you have to run pretty much daily or every other day, and then you got to make up for that day. It was basically like just over 8.5K a day. I think 8.6 something K a day. You have to run every day to get 3000K. So if I didn't run one day, that means I was down. Like my next run had to be 16K to keep up with it, or I would do long runs once a week, usually on Sunday. That would be between like 21 to 40 plus K, and then I would have some Ks in the bank. So then maybe I could, if there's like a brutally cold day, it's like, well, okay, I've banked these kilometers. I can take these days off and then get back at it the next day or like when it warms up. But no, yeah, I've definitely done the -37. I know for sure like -35. This last cold snap we had, I went out in it. I was just frustrated. My car battery died twice and I wanted to get a run in. So it's like, screw this, layer up and then just get it, go.
That's pretty sweet. So got a question on that one for you. So, and that was 2021. That was the 3K, right? 3K in 1 year.
Yeah.
Was that correct?
Yep.
So kind of got a 2-parter on this one, or I might have a 2-parter. First part, how how vital do you think clarity of an outcome is when pursuing something? So I'm sure like you don't just run just to run. Like I don't just work out just to work out. Like my reasoning for it, my intention for it is longevity. And I find that most people have like some sort of an intention behind it. And when there's intention and when there's clarity, then everything else is it's just like, do you want to do it or not? And I like having this cool way of thinking of it is like, let's say it was the 3K goal. It's either you do more or want less.
Yeah.
So you put in the effort, because skill acquisition or just like getting things done is time times volume. So the duration of time plus times the total amount of time allocated with volume. So across the board, we're just doing it a lot. So yeah, how important is clarity for accomplishing a goal? Let's go with that one first.
I think for clarity, I think you have to be, when you're setting goals, yeah, I think you have to have intention behind them. Is it realistic? Is this a realistic goal you're trying to attain? Maybe they can be not realistic now, but it's like a 5-year goal. So you're inching towards that. And then you do that check-in every year. Am I closer to it? Is this attainable? I think for stuff that was shorter term, like, this is 1 year. I know what I have to do. You just have to go out and do it. That's very clear because it's like very cut and dry. You break it down to the day. This is what I need to run per day to get this goal. Do I want to finish on day 365? I didn't. I wanted to finish earlier. I had a goal of like, I wanted to have the last 2 weeks to celebrate, not really celebrate, but just like give my body some time to a couple of weeks to relax. It could be cold. I was thinking of that too. I was like, mid-December, usually we get one blast of cold before Christmas. And like this year we did. So like, if I can avoid that, sweet. Cause I'd rather end on maybe a -5 day than a -30. So there was that clarity. And then the clarity came in the discipline that it kind of evolved with me. Cause when you set a goal kind of like that, and, this could be any kind of goal. Like, if it's something that you want to do in 1 year time, you have 365 days to do it. Whatever the case may be, you break it down to like the smallest bit as you can of like, okay, now it's attainable because like 3,000K is a large number. So when you're thinking of that, January 1st, you're like, all right, what do I even want to run today? Do I want to run 8? Do I just want to do the bare minimum? Do I want to run 10? Like, how do I want to structure it? And sometimes I just went out and ran. Just like, I just want to enjoy it. One thing I wanted to make sure I did was enjoy most of it, like the vast majority. So I knew there would be definitely some days where you didn't want to do it at all. And I think that happens with all of us working out, you're trying to keep fit. We all kind of hit those periods where motivation is very low. And I think what it really taught me was the discipline of like consistency breeds success. And that can now spill into a lot of different parts of my life, because knowing you can stick to something for a year when you can get sick, there's vacations, there's curveballs, there's injuries, there's stuff that can derail you, but it's like figuring out how to get back on track and figuring out that plan to still finish it. I think it really kind of helps you just, again, it's another thing on the shelf of like, it's another big thing I just did that was difficult and it was long, and it was like, you weren't going to finish this in a couple months. This is going to take a long time to do this. And the feeling of accomplishment, it was just like, I didn't really celebrate. I was just like, cool, I did it. Awesome. Check.
Yeah.
But the clarity came from, I think, the discipline that it taught me every day. Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I'm curious because you've actually like, I find, so there's obviously like 3-month goals, 1 month goal, 6-month goal, I find that kind of similar to just previous goals. I find that when it comes to a challenge, like yourself doing 3K in 1 year or me not drinking for 1 year, I find that there is no duration of time less than that that's worthwhile. And I found that for myself. So I'm kind of like, well, shit. Now everything that I do has to be, well, it doesn't have to be, but it feels like I'm drawn closer to like, just set it for a year. Just say 1 year, just 1 year of doing this one thing and see what happens. But now I'm like, what can I do for like 100 of anything?
Yeah.
Or like 100 days. I'm doing 100 podcast. I'm doing 100 recordings or 100 podcasts in 100 days. But that's my first time where I'm doing a duration of time where it has to do with a professional goal rather than a physical goal. And I think it was just an interesting observation that I had in the last like week or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, tackling it's going to be the same thing, right? Because you're going to, to do it 100 days straight, there's going to be curveballs. There's going to be obstacles that you get hit with of, oh no, the internet went down. How am I going to record my podcast today? Or, oh, I'm not feeling great. I don't want to record today. Like there's going to be so many other variables that try to deter you and pull you away from it. And it's like, can you stay consistent? And actually, something that just happened to me with my job, I can probably thank me doing that run, 3,000K in 1 year. I got recently promoted, and to get the promotion, yeah, thanks. And to get the promotion, I had to, it was kind of the same thing. It was a shorter time frame. It was 1 month. I had to perform, hit X amount of meetings and X amount of volume of calls basically per week. So I had 5 days to get 10 meetings and then 150 calls. And I had to do that for 4 weeks straight, or 4-week average, to get the promotion. And it took a little bit. It ended up taking me 2 months, but it was like, you had to get consistent. And, looking at the big number was daunting. And I just did the same thing. I was just like, hey, what do I have to do every day? Every day, set 2 meetings, do X amount of calls, get 30 calls. So it's like, some days were higher, some days were lower, but it was just like, hit that average. And you just go through that kind of roller coaster up and down. Some days you feel like you're crushing it and you're like, oh, I can do it. This is no problem. And then other days you're like, you're not feeling motivated. There's no drive. And you're just like, what's the goal? It's this. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to meet. Then I know what I have to do. And like, whatever you have to do to get it done, it's like, but you have to be conscious of it, and you have to be the driver of your motivation. You can't seek it somewhere else, because it's only going to last for like a second. It's going to be brief, and it's going to go away. Sometimes I'm about to go for a run and I'm kind of dilly-dallying and, just not consciously doing it, but unconsciously like sipping my coffee a little longer, maybe doing a stretch. Oh, I'm just like deliberately not sure what I want to wear, because I'm just like prolonging this. And then, you open it up and there's David Goggins screaming at you about why you should get after it. You're like, all right. But
Totally.
That's not going to last, right? That'll last for a second, but like, he's not going to, like, people like that aren't going to motivate you to do the whole thing yourself. Like, you got to find it within you. You got to find the discipline to keep the motivation when you aren't feeling it. So that's like, the discipline breeds that, because you just like, when you're feeling great, you're loving it. And it's like, I should enjoy this because it's not going to last. And then when you're in the shit, also be conscious of it. Maybe you're not enjoying it, but be present. You know what? I'm not feeling it today. That's fine, but I'm still going to get it done, and it's going to suck, but that's okay. And I'm okay with that, because I know what the goal is.
One takeaway that you mentioned that I want to touch on, because I think it's really cool and really important, is the tactic of, and I just call it tactics, systems, frameworks. It's a thing But the takeaway that I want to pull out of what you just said there that I think is really cool is basically taking the thing that seems daunting and then turning it into bite-sized pieces. And I truly think like this is a cool, I like in our brains, there is only right now, right? And then we either bring the past into the present or we're just forecasting our present into our future. Like we're thinking about the future, right?
Yeah.
So I think when we are able to take that big daunting thing and then break it up into what can we do in the present, and then when tomorrow comes around, if tomorrow comes around, then we think, what can we do today in the present? And I think chopping it down to those bite-sized daily activities, even if it's just one activity like running, or maybe it's like one activity of making a post, an article, a podcast episode, a video, it could be anything, right? I think by taking those bite-sized chunks, it helps so much with such an intimidating kind of goal, and you're able to like calm yourself down and just do it little by little, which also takes patience, that's for damn sure, but it makes it seem a lot simpler to do. I did the math for 100 podcasts in 100 days, and I have to do 8.3 repeated. I'm just joking. Eight podcasts per week for me to be able to crank out 100. And I think I only put that on a couple of days. I didn't put it as one per day. I didn't put 100 days. So I just went per week. But knowing that there's 8, like I got you today, and then I have another podcast later on this week, freaking solid. But I have to intentionally make sure that I'm asking folks, hey, would you be interested in this podcast episode? I think that you have a lot to contribute and blah, 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 and then bring them in. But there's still that intention to keep on doing it and have that patience to do it, right? What was the other thing that you said there that I thought was really cool? I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I thought that was a really good takeaway. What was it that you ended with before I started talking? Because I think that I had a pretty decent point, but I forgot what it was.
I was talking about motivation and drive. And
oh, right. I remember now.
You have to create your motivation.
I'm gonna go with my framework on the idea of motivation as well, because then it's cool seeing like 2 different perspectives of the motivation component. And mine also works with discipline and everything like that. But what I like to do is this is gonna sound super weird, but we can feel our feelings, but also look at them objectively. So a feeling is neither good nor bad. If we do not connect a morality to a feeling, then the feeling just is. We're just feeling something. So we can have the stimulus, then we have a feeling. And then that feeling is based off of the story we tell ourselves about that thing, more often than not. Motivation is a feeling. It is under the category of feeling. I don't know why we prioritize such a feeling. Why don't we prioritize despair that freaking hard? People would be crushing it nowadays, which is kind of a funny thought. That's dark. But I like to use this as an exercise where I try to separate like the facts from the feelings. There's the dichotomy of facts and feelings. And I look at a majority of feelings, I don't trust them. And the reason why I don't trust my feelings, even if it's happiness, because I'm like, why is it that I'm happy? So I like asking myself the question about it. But the reason why I don't trust feelings is because they're flaky. They don't have my best interests at heart. It has my baseline interest at heart, which is survival. And I like to view motivation as a flaky friend. Motivation is the flaky friend that is great when that friend shows up, but they're not so likely to help you out when it comes to moving day. You know, it's like they're nice when they're around, but when they're not around, it's like, yeah, okay. But we depend on that flaky friend to fulfill our whatever, our desire, our need to accomplish things. And I like to think that whatever we depend on makes the rules. If we're depending on a flaky friend to be able to make progress, and I like to put it as our health, wealth, health, wealth, relationships, and happiness. I like thinking of it in that kind of a matrix. And so I find motivation. I always associate motivation with that flaky friend, where it's nice when they're around. So when I'm motivated, I use it. I do not waste it. I'm not saying motivation is bad by any means, but it's definitely not trustworthy.
Nope. Absolutely not. Because there's that day where like you have something maybe marked on the calendar, and every day leading up to it, you're like, yep, it's happening. It's gonna be no problem. We're getting it done. Day happens, and all of a sudden you're not feeling it. It's gone. Motivation left you, and you're like, oh, I have to do this. I don't want to now. Oh, maybe I won't. It's okay if I don't. Whereas like the drive is what keeps you going on that level, because the drive will be like, yeah, drive is the consistent one, because it's there. If you have it, the motivation will go up and down on it, but you won't waver on it. And like, yeah, when you're motivated, that's why, hey, I'm feeling really motivated today. You're right, it's feeling, and you're like, yep, this workout's gonna be easy, no problem. Like, do it. It's the day that you don't want to do it, and that's like the most important day to go out and run. And I think, I don't know if it was Goggins or someone that had mentioned that, it's like, it's not about the days you want to, it's the days you don't. And that's what defines how you're, if you're going to hit that goal or not. It's like, because yeah, it's easy when motivation's there. You're feeling it, your muscles are working good, your brain's working good, whatever it is. Like, I'm writing, if it's a writing goal, I'm writing like 10 pages today. And then there's a day it's like it's a struggle to write one. And that's what the drive, that's what creating a strong drive brings, because it's going to get you out of the bed when you don't want to. And when you just like know you have to do something, you just don't let that waver. You just like, whatever, I'm just going to get it done.
I think I like thinking of going robot mode. It's like, don't think, just do it. Just like, just like relax everything, or not relax everything, but just like, don't think.
Funny you mentioned robot mode. That is a mantra that I do bring with me on. I brought it on me during like Sinister, some of the longer ultras I've done, when things start to hurt and things aren't getting enjoyable. I kind of like, I am a machine. I don't feel. It's just go, turn off the feeling, turn off the pain, just get it done. One step, 1 foot. That's all it takes. Just keep moving.
Okay, I got a cool question. It kind of ties into a couple things. So if you were to explain to a 12-year-old child how to separate the facts from the feelings, like how to separate the facts and the feelings, what would you say? Because I know that I understand that there's, for like context of where this question came from, there's a lot of people that are defined by how they feel rather than defining the feeling. That sounded pretty cool. So I'm gonna there's a YouTube clip right there. But they're defined by the feeling rather than defining the feeling. And but pre-World's Toughest Mudder, WTM, pre-WTM. This is my timeline. There's BC, there's AD, same. So before that point, I had horrible emotional regulation. I wouldn't say horrible. I was pretty decent. Like I was certainly not like off the rails like many other individuals. So I guess I'm being hard on myself, but I think looking back, we're usually a lot tougher on ourselves than we really need to be.
Yep.
Which is really important to give ourselves some grace period, I suppose. But it wasn't until after that point where, and I totally believe that the discomfort really helped with dialing in that kind of vibe. And I will definitely admit there's probably a little bit of like the psychedelics in there that also helped with that, like little bit of the separation from the ego and everything that goes along with that. Cause I really, really enjoy like everything that's happening with, like the combination of therapy and like MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, like Michael Pollan on Netflix, Change Your Mind.
Yeah,
That is
amazing.
really freaking cool. So I'm very curious about what could happen, because I could say for my own experience that I was able to really separate the facts from the feelings. So I guess without in let's say hypothetically psilocybin did not exist and that was not an option. What do you think? What's your take on that? What do you think would be a cool tactic or tool, or maybe even question? What mental framework would you give a 12-year-old when it comes to the facts and the feelings? That is such a long drawn out question, but
Yeah. I think trying to teach the power of consistency. I think that would put the fact to the feeling. And when you asked me that, I was like just thinking of 12-year-old me. I played hockey, so I played organized hockey for my whole childhood basically. And if it taught anything, it was like there's stuff that's going to be happening throughout your week that is going to be happening. Your Saturday morning, you're not sleeping in. You're getting up at 5 a.m. to go to Fort Saskatchewan for a practice, or Josephburg. For people in Alberta, you know where that is. You're going to Moyer, Mundare for a 6 a.m. practice. And that's not what a kid wants to do on their Saturday morning, right? But so, for the majority of kids, it's the parent waking them up early and, hey, we got to go start to get ready. Here's the water, get to the rink. At least the reward after is usually stop at McDonald's after. So that, I know for me, that was in my head. I was like, this sucks, but there's a reward after. There's McDonald's breakfast coming. I'm getting a hash brown. So just do this crappy part of practice that's early and cold, but there's some good after. And I think that would probably be my lesson, teaching consistency and teaching them the outcome, the positive outcome that comes from being consistent and doing things consistently, whatever that is. If they're not doing sports, there's always something that you can teach them on, consistently making your bed, consistently cleaning your room, consistently doing something to breed discipline. And discipline, I think, sometimes gets a nasty, can feel like a nasty word, because it's usually discipline is reverted to as a bad thing. And I think that you change the mind frame of it, that this isn't a bad thing that I'm teaching you. This is something very strong, and you're going to be able to take this for the rest of your life. We're building this foundation of discipline with you, of when there's a task at hand, there's just okay, we're getting up at 5, we're going to practice. Yes, there's a reward after. You get that cookie. You get the cookie for doing the hard thing, but you have to get up to get it first. So I think that's what I would try and teach a 12-year-old. Whether that would be successful, it'd probably take a long time. I think it took me a long time. And I can to go further with this. I had some teaching of this, not just with hockey. So usually in the summer, my family has a cattle farm, has a dairy farm in Innisfail, and my brother and I would usually go there for usually a couple of weeks in the summer. I was not a farmer. I didn't want to be a farmer. So, there it's 5 a.m. every day. You're getting up. There's no day off. There's absolutely 0 days off on the farm. And, I would get up usually by 7, make it out there to finish chores. But I was usually sneaking in to the house earlier. I would find my opportunity, sneak in, and then I'd be first one in line for breakfast. My uncle would just be like, "Oh, really? You skip out and then you think you're going to eat first?" And he would get to the back. I just didn't understand it at the time. He, I was usually cleaning calf pens, which to me, that was the worst thing. It was so hard because it's manure. Basically, you're cleaning out this calf pen full of manure to put the fresh hay in. And I would see my uncle and my cousin out in the tractor, harvesting, doing their thing. And I'd just be so envious and so angry that I'm doing this hard stuff and they're getting to sit all day. what was me. But I look back at it now, and that was beginning to lay some foundation, and I'm happy for it now that I had to do those things, because I think it did help me as I got to get going in some endurance stuff and doing things that are pretty tough. I didn't know at the time, but that stuff kind of laid some foundation for me. So that's what I would try and teach a 12-year-old.
That's pretty sweet. I really like that. I'm going to go with, I think consistency is actually really sweet too. I'm going to go with consistency for the same answer. I'm going to steal your answer, but I got a different context with it. I believe that consistency provides us the evidence to counter our intrusive thoughts. So I like to think of things like a court case where it's between facts and feelings, and whoever wins the court case, evidence wins the court case. And I believe that when we have consistency, that's actually us accumulating information against our intrusive thoughts and feelings. So if there's the intrusive thought of, I don't deserve this, or the intrusive thought of, I'm not making any progress, the consistency before that point, we can look at and see if the facts line up with how we feel. Because and the cool thing, this is going to be a nerdy thing, this is a nerdy philosophy thing, but we can use the Socratic method of debate on ourselves. And that is broken up into the philos, the philosophy, the ethos, the ethics, and the logos, the logic. And if we can talk, like if we're talking and we have two disagreeing POVs, point of views, and you're able to hit those 3 points, our brains want truth, knowledge, and they want to go with the easiest route. So if we can actually show the philosophy, the ethics are well-intentioned, and the logic is sound, those are the 3 components of being able to win a debate. Because outside of that, it could be someone yelling, and it could be anger reacting to logic that's responding. Mm-hmm. So I think when we're looking back at our past activities, then we can actually prove our thoughts wrong. And the thing that I think is really fun, this is where the consistency comes in, is we don't get that stack of papers, that stack of evidence day one. I think each day is a paper. Like, what did I do today? I did this, this, this. And I think like that is also something that's cool, is like if someone has a daily journaling practice and they're trying to develop better behaviors and trying to like just better themselves in whatever way it could be, reflecting on what we did that day to see if we actually move the needle forward is really important, to be able to stack the facts. It's like when someone's feeling, oh, I'm not making any progress. Well, look at the past. Look at the facts behind us. It's like you haven't done anything leading up to today. So of course, right? And I think this is actually something I'm going to do in a YouTube video. Well, this is going to be a YouTube video as well. So if you're listening to this, be sure to like, subscribe, comment below, favorite takeaway. Be sure to check out Shaun. If you're on any podcast app, be sure to leave a 5-star review and let me know what you think and who I should talk to. So anyways, shameless plug. So I totally lost my train of thought now.
Doing the shameless plug, forgot what you're talking about.
I know, right? Oh yeah, consistency. So I think oh right. So for the YouTube video, I'm gonna do two life lessons from Kratos in God of War Ragnarok. And you know what? I'll actually just tell you them now, because it's actually kind of cool. Maybe I'll actually just turn this into the YouTube video. So 2 lessons that I learned from Kratos from God of War Ragnarok. Lesson number 1, to have godly muscles, if you want godly muscles, you have to put in the work. You can have godly strength, but not godly muscles. Those are 2 different things. And he actually talks about that one where Atreus, his kid, is like, when will I look like you? And Kratos is like, what do you mean? He's like, big and or strong, big and strong. He's like, you have the strength of a god. And then Trace is like, yeah, I know, but like, what about the muscles? He's like, if you want the muscles of a god, you have to work for them. I'm like, oh, fitness advice in a video game right there. So the second thing, yeah, right. The second thing, and I think this one applies with the consistency significantly more, is the Norns. There's the Norns, which are like the Sisters of Fate in Greek mythology, and the Norns are the weavers of fate. And what they talk about in the video game, I think, is very interesting. What they say is that they're actually not the weavers of fate. They just look at the past behavior of the characters and they're able to predict their future based off of how they behave.
Oh.
So we're able to tell our future. And I tell my clients this as well. We're able to tell our future by looking at our past. So if we're able to change like certain behaviors to fit like a particular thing, then we just freaking go for it. But I just thought that was cool. 2 little lessons from a video game about life.
God of War, love it.
Yeah, man. I haven't played any of it.
Awesome.
I just watch the videos while I'm working. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Sweet, man. Awesome. Well, my friend, we're going on an hour and a half. I think so far you are the longest podcast. So you have the record for the longest podcast. There's another record you can put under your belt.
There you go. Woo!
The longest, not just the longest distance, but longest duration podcast.
Boom.
Sweet. And then, as always, I sent you the questions before. I know you're pretty stoked about it. Mm-hmm. But every podcast, I do have 2 questions at the end. So, ready?
Yep.
Question number 1. If you're on your deathbed and all of your content was gone, anything like any lesson that you have, anything that you wrote, this podcast, anything, everything is just gone. There's just you on your deathbed after a run. And because that's where I imagine would be the highest probability situation, which is kind of dark. But yeah, so all that content was gone. What message would you like to leave behind?
Yeah, amazing question. I think it kind of goes into like a legacy. And, when people think of like, they start to try and conjure that up of like, what legacy do I want to leave? What legacy do I want people to remember me by? It can get kind of overwhelming, especially the vast majority of us are kind of put into, the middle of the pack, which, it's just how it goes. So how does a middle of the pack person leave a legacy? And I think it's the impact that you have on other people around you. So I think, you take away all the physical stuff, all the accolades, It's like, how did you make people feel around you? So try and leave a positive impact on the people that are closest to you. I think if you do that, I think that's like a really important lesson that a lot of us need to have refreshers on. It's even this morning, I went to get a couple things at the grocery store. Guy working, it was his first day, so obviously things are going slow. So it's just like, instead of being agitated that it's taking 30 seconds longer to process all the payment and all that stuff, it's just like, cool. I was like supportive, and at the end, it was like, hey, I have a really good first day today. Do that with as many people as you can throughout your life, and I think that's a good lesson to leave, or a good lesson for people to learn.
I definitely agree with you. Yeah. I definitely agree with you. I like the saying of people will never remember your face or your name, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important. Then the final question, how would you define living a limitless life? What is a limitless life to you?
It's continually just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And when you do that, you'll hopefully find another thing that you didn't know that you had in you. And like I said, that can be physical. So whether it's you want to run your first 5K, you want to complete 5 pull-ups, you want to work out 5 days a week, you want to move to another city, you're moving in with your partner, it's all this stuff puts another layer of mental toughness in you, and that will make you feel a little more limitless. Because when you push yourself out of your comfort zone, you're going to find out that you're okay. Things are going to be okay. It's only a short amount of time usually that you're in the suck for, and the positive effect after it will leave such a greater impact on you. So get yourself out of your comfort zone, because that's where the juicy stuff is.
Oh, that is an awesome way to end this podcast, Shaun. Thank you very much. Do you want to plug anything? Do you want any people to reach out to you? Any socials? Anything like that? Maybe your Strava app socials? People can follow you for your discussing. What was the distance? What was the distance accumulated in Strava again? You said it was 8190?
8,109 apparently.
Nice.
So,
I think there's probably quite a bit more somewhere out there.
Yeah. Before the tracking. Yeah, before tracking was too big, but you can find me on Instagram. I think it's SDKC. I think SDK Caron. There it is. Got to even remember my Instagram page.
There you go.
If you want to check me out there. It's usually running or mountains and camping. So that's the majority of my Instagram posts. So you want to see an occasional run, get plugged, it'll be on there. But yeah, I think the biggest plug is just do something that's out of your comfort zone. Do something that you don't really want to do.
I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for being on this episode, dude. I appreciate you a ton. And I'm just excited to see what you're going to be doing in the next chunk of time. You're not someone who is gonna. I don't see you exactly sitting still. So I'm really excited to see where this progression, wherever it goes. I'm excited to see where it goes. I just know that you're someone that's a well-intentioned human being that wants the best for others. And I think that you not only that you embody it to the fullest extent. And I think that that's something that's very important. And I totally agree that there's more folks that need to have that kind of love in their life and that wellness.
Yeah. Like how you call it love. Give yourself some love.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right. For any of you that are listening, for those of you that are listening, any of you, I would love for you to subscribe to whatever you're listening to, or whatever you're listening to, subscribe to it. If it's on a podcast app, then be sure to leave a 5-star review. I appreciate it a ton. If you didn't like the podcast, be sure to go into those comments and tell me why. I'm cool with taking some criticism, some feedback. I like being wrong. So be sure to do that. Same with YouTube. Subscribe. Be sure to like, subscribe. If you found any benefit or some takeaways in this episode, be sure to comment it wherever you're listening to. And other than that, I hope you have an amazing day. I hope your day treats you as good as you look. And I always want you to know that you are cared for. People do give a shit about you. You just need to give a shit about yourself a little bit more. So have yourself a wonderful day. Thanks, man. And I'll chat with you later.